Welcome back to the deep dive. Our focus today is it's on one of the most painful locations of the October 7th, 2020 attack, Kibbutz Kfar Aza. This is a really crucial, challenging, and I think profoundly. And our mission, well, it's simple. Take this stack of raw source material, the first-hand accounts, the testimonials, the military debrief, and try to extract the critical lessons from all that chaos.
That's exactly right. And these sources, I mean, they come directly from the residents, the soldiers, the commanders who are actually there. They don't offer some kind of sanitized overview. No, it's a ground-level view. Sheer terror, unimaginable tactical confusion, but also extraordinary personal courage.
And what we're forced to confront really right away is this paradox that seems to define Kfar Aza. The sources tell us again and again this is a story of a terrible and immense failure. The Hebrew term is makdal, a failure that allowed the tragedy to unfold on a scale, well, frankly, no.
But at the same time, and this is crucial, woven through every single harrowing detail, is this story of supreme heroism, Gevurta Eilat.
Right.
It's the story of just a handful of individuals who stood up, who fought back against these just unimaginable odds. They filled that terrifying vacuum that was created by the systemic failure.
So to really get this, you have to hold both ideas at once.
You absolutely do. The failure and the heroism operating side by side.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. We need to grasp the scale of this thing. The initial assault, we're talking over 200 terrorists pouring into the kibbutz.
Yeah, pouring in. And the sources, they confirm that the military's, the designated defense system, it just collapsed.
Almost instantly.
Instantly. And that right there, that's the moment the narrative shifts. It goes from this systemic security failure to individual sacrifice. Because for those crucial first few hours, the defense of Kfar Aza, it rested almost entirely on its local standby squad.
The Kitat Hananit.
Exactly. A small volunteer emergency response team. Residents, basically, with light weapons usually.
And the cost they paid is tragic. 7 members of that volunteer squad.
7. Fighting desperately.
Fighting desperately to protect their own community, their neighbors, their families. And this was before a single Israeli soldier arrived and properly, entered the kibbutz to actually engage the attack.
So this community was completely exposed, just forced to fight alone.
For their very existence.
And to understand that initial shock, you really have to remember the geography. For the residents, the reality was surreal. People described it as time stood still.
Yeah.
Kfar Aza is terrifyingly close to the Gaza Strip. I mean, we're talking just 1.5 kilometers.
That's nothing.
It's nothing. Separating the kibbutz from big places like Jabalia, Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun.
It's not just close, it makes it incredibly vulnerable. As one survivor, I think, tragically noted, that small distance suddenly felt like, quote, a promenade.
A promenade, yeah. Allowing hundreds of terrorists just easy access. And that proximity meant the scale of the atrocity was immediate. It was intimate.
The sources, they don't. They are brutal in their descriptions.
They are. Witnesses, including, the dedicated first responders, the Zake teams who went in after the military, they used the term slaughterhouse to describe the scene. It was just a level of savagery that, well, it defies normal descriptions of military engagement.
And one detail that it sticks with you. It highlights the utter disregard for life, the intimacy of the killings. It's the description from the cleaning crews later.
Yeah, that's hard to even talk about.
Witnesses recounted blood like water everywhere. And even 10 days later, remnants of human remains were still being found on couch inside family homes.
Yeah.
This wasn't some distant battle. This was house-to-house extermination.
And the scope of the invasion itself was mass. Military debriefs, the ones cited in our source material, they established that roughly 250 terrorists arrived.
250?
Yeah, in waves. It started with about 50 in the initial breach, then rapidly another 100, and then another surge of 100 more.
So this wasn't just some opportunistic raid.
No. This was planned. This was an invasion involving effectively a small army.
And the casualty figures, they just confirm the absolute nature of it. Over 30 entire families murdered.
Entire families.
Yeah.
Children, parents, grandparents, wiped out completely. The goal wasn't just terror or kidnapping. It was, it seems, wholesale eradication in that area.
To really try and internalize the personal horror, we have to look at Yvonne. Initially, in the chaos and the lack of information in those first week, the story was, or the fragment suggested, they were likely killed hiding together under their bed.
Right. A terrible image, but almost contained.
Exact. But then months later, as their belongings, their devices were recovered, analyzed, the truth through their digital messages. And it was far more agonizing.
Because what they recovered were WhatsApp messages Savant sent while the terrorists were actively inside her house.
So she wasn't just passively hiding.
Not at all. She was desperately trying to get help. She reached out to a local youth group chat, sent this terrifying, visceral text, "Urgent help. They are in my house."
Oh my God. So they knew. They were aware. And in immediate danger inside their own home, their safe haven.
Yes, and the final message, the most haunting piece of communication, was her last WhatsApp to her father.
And it wasn't even about her own rescue.
No, it was this final, desperate act of love, of protection. She wrote, "Dad, promise me you're okay, that Mom is okay, that Gilly is okay."
In that moment, her focus was entirely outward.
Ensuring the people she loved were safe. That tiny message found months later.
Right.
It just captures the purest form of selfless heroism imaginable in the face of just absolute evil. It's almost unbearable to process.
Yeah, unbearable. That incredible, heartbreaking testimony really sets the emotional tone. But now we need to shift perspective from the victims to the military personnel who are racing against time to respond. Let's unpack that response, starting with the Golani 13 soldiers. They were just on a routine assignment when that morning began.
Right. And the sources, they lay out a pretty strict timeline that just underscores how quickly things descended into chaos. 6:30 a.m., the heavy rocket fire started.
Which was common initially.
Relatively common, yeah. But by 7 a.m., these soldiers, positioned nearby in a field, they start hearing intensive small arms gunfire.
Okay, that's different.
That's the moment of realization. They understood instantly this is way more than just rockets. Something is happening in the sector, as they put it. Something kinetic and close.
And their initial mission, it was fluid, unstable, reflecting the confusion.
Completely. First, they're told, go defend the neighboring kibbutz, Nahalal. But then that order gets overridden almost immediately.
Why the sudden switch to Kfar Aza?
It seems they were redirected specifically after getting some kind of communication, again, probably ad hoc, not standard channels, from an officer named Tomer Greenberg, the colonel of Russia. May his memory be a blessing.
Okay.
He managed to report that the battalion commander was already wounded, and crucially, that there were significant numbers of terrorists already inside Kfar Aza.
So that intelligence basically flagged Kfar Aza as the critical point, absolute hotspot.
Exactly, the site of immediate existential conflict.
So their entry wasn't some planned strategic thing. It was a desperate reaction. Around 9:00 a.m., maybe 10:30 a.m., they make their move. Tell us about that hasty entry.
It was pure high-risk improvisation. Just 11 fighters, including the commander and the radio operator, they jump onto a single-namer APC.
An armored personnel carrier.
A very heavily armored one, yeah. Designed to take heavy hits, which they absolutely needed. But they had to leave everything else behind, supporting vehicles, extra gear.
Just pile in and go.
Pile in and go. And their entry method was just as aggressive. They simply rammed the rear gate of the kibbutz, forced their way in, signaling total commitment.
And this is where that fog of war becomes terrifyingly real, the second they get inside.
Immediately. The sources describe this immediate friendly fire scare.
Right.
They spot 4 people running in the street, all dressed in black.
And they assumed.
They operated purely on instinct, assumption. Under extreme stress, expecting terrorists everywhere, they opened fire, convinced they had engaged a cell.
But then...
And after just 2 or 3 rounds, one man dives behind a parked car, throws his hands up and surrenders.
That split second must have been paralyzing.
Totally. And in that instant, they ceased fire. And the reason they stopped, this is the detail that's just burned into the memory of those soldiers.
What was it?
They noticed the man's tzitzit, his ritual fringes, hanging out from under his shirt.
Wow.
That was it. The definitive, instant civilian ID marker in that context.
Yeah.
They realized they had almost killed residents, their own people.
That tiny detail, a religious marker in the middle of that intense life or death confusion, forces a complete reset. It just underscores the immense stress, right? And the critical need for selectivity, even when you're facing this overwhelming threat.
Exactly. And that realization, the risk of friendly fire, it was immediately followed by the brutal reality check of the invasion itself.
Yay.
After that incident, the Golani team goes into the very first house to start clearing. And what do they find?
The bodies of a mother and daughter shot in their bed.
Oh, God.
One of the soldiers later recounted, that seeing that, they instantly understood, quote, "We were in a different kind of event."
Yeah. This wasn't a border skirmish.
Not at all. They were confronting an enemy capable of war crime, operating deep inside Israeli community. This confirmed full-scale, absolute massacre scenario, far beyond anything they could have initially briefed.
So the soldiers barely had time to even process that horror before the situation just escalated dramatically. They managed to neutralize, 2 individuals on a motorcycle?
Yeah.
About 60, 70 meters away?
Yeah, a brief success. But then they looked back towards the Gaza border. And that's when what the sources call the turning point in the plot happened. They saw this convoy of pickups emerging from Gaza.
Not just stragglers.
Yeah.
A convoy.
No, this wasn't disorganized. This was an influx of about 60 additional terrorists. And they were described described as looking highly motivated, well-trained, a massive reinforcing wave. So this tiny initial Golani fort, just 11 fighters, already exhausted, probably traumatized, suddenly they're tasked with blocking a coordinated second wave. Dozens of fresh fighters.
How could they? They couldn't, really. The fighting immediately fractured. It broke into these scattered, intense engagements around fortified points, like the main concrete position, the Batanda.
They were just instantly overwhelmed.
Pretty much. Casualties started mounting right away. An Israeli sniper sergeant took 2 bullets in the shoulder almost immediately.
And the sources say the forces got scattered.
Completely scattered. One group pinned down on a roof, another inside a nearby house, just trying to hold a position. A third finds itself isolated in a courtyard somewhere.
Total fragment.
And the confusion, the danger, it just gets compounded when the house sheltering the commander and, crucially, the radio operator takes direct RPG hit.
So they're fighting in pockets, isolated.
Complete isolation and fragmentation. And this brings us right to the heart of the systemic failure, the Makdal. Military communication, the absolute bedrock of coordinated action, was effectively non-functional.
Throughout the whole crisis.
Throughout.
Yeah.
Standard radio comms just went down, or they were unusable because of the speed, the scope of the attack, just static or overload.
Okay, so if the radios are down, how are they directing any kind of support, especially air assets? That could potentially deal with those reinforcements.
This is where you see just astonishing improvisation born out of desperation. The only way, apparently, that ground forces could contact and direct air support was through these highly unreliable ad hoc methods.
Like what?
The sources highlight one instance. It's incredible. A radio operator had to answer an unidentified phone call, probably on a cell network that was still, sporadically working.
Okay.
It was an air controller circling above, a ZIC unit.
So air support calling a soldier's cell phone?
Basically, yeah. And they were flying blind relative to precise coordinates. They couldn't use proper military targeting grids or anything.
So how did they guide them?
Using basic generalized descriptions like, we see a line of cars near the yellow gate, or they're running near the fence by the children's house. Imagine trying to direct life-saving fire support using those vague terms in a built-up civilian area. The risk.
Just unbelievable pressure. And the reliance on shaky tech didn't stop there, did it? What's truly shocking is where the real-time...
Yeah, this is mind-blowing. It wasn't Command Central. It wasn't higher headquarters feeding them info.
So where?
Often it was the kibbutz WhatsApp groups.
Seriously, WhatsApp?
Seriously. Terrified civilians, hiding in their safe rooms, sending out distress texts, real-time locations, observations, terrorists in the youth neighborhood, shooting near the dining hall.
So civilian messages became battlefield intelligence.
For a significant period, yes. This civilian communication network became the de facto real-time command structure for the military units trying to save them. I mean, that is the definition of a catastrophic system failure requiring immediate grassroots heroism just to mitigate the damage.
Wow. Okay, so despite this just overwhelming operational failure, eventually additional forces started to arrive, mobilized from home, from Lee.
Finally, yeah. Around 10:30 a.m., maybe noon, the first special forces started trickling in. Units from Duvdevan, Sayre at Matkal.
And they came in fast.
Their urgency was absolute. They made this calculated, extremely high-risk decision to just drive into the region in unarmored vehicles. Regular cars, basically.
Why?
They knew the overwhelming need was for boots on the ground to stabilize the sector, stop the bleeding. It outweighed the personal risk of exposure. They just couldn't wait for armored convoys to assemble.
And their first contact was immediate.
Immediate and fierce.
Yeah.
They ran into 20, maybe 30 terrorists in the veterans' neighborhood. There was another moment of brief confusion, again, just illustrating the chaos. They thought for a second it might be the standby squad members.
Like you realized quickly.
Very quick. Realized it was the enemy. Engaged in a really fierce firefight.
Yeah.
Forced those terrorists to pull back deeper into the center of the kibbutz. This was, the beginning of the organized pushback, however small it was initially.
So as these special forces move deeper into the kibbutz, the fight changes, right? It goes from more open engagement to close quarters, house to house.
Exactly. And this is where that tactical dilemma just becomes exponentially more complex. You mentioned selective fire earlier, the need for precise targeting in a civilian area.
Yeah.
That concept was basically shattered by the reality in Kfar Aza.
Yeah.
Inside these homes, the soldiers faced this, triple threat. Every single house potentially contained either a terrorist or a civilian, or sometimes terrifyingly both. Hostage or terrorists using civilians as shields, or just chaos. The complexity of deciding whether to shoot, where to shoot, it was immense. Knowing a wrong choice could mean killing an innocent person or getting yourself killed by a hidden enemy.
What made the actual house clearing so uncertain? You mentioned the safe rooms.
The mamad. The secure room. In every Israeli home, right, reinforced, sealed room for rocket attack, on October 7th, it became this focal point of absolute uncertainty.
Because you didn't know who was behind the door.
Exactly. The sources emphasize this again and again. Until that heavy steel door opened, the soldiers simply did not know what they were going to find. Were they about to greet traumatized innocent victims waiting desperately for rescue, or were they about to face well-armed terrorists who'd gotten there first, waiting in ambush? That constant uncertainty meant every single room entry was this paralyzing life-or-death gamble.
And this inherent danger, it led to immediate tragic losses for those arriving special forces.
Right away. The sources detail heavy casualties almost immediately upon entry. Major Ben Bushana, Lieutenant Ben Bornstein, fighter Amir Fisher, all killed during these incredibly complex rescue and clearing operations. Yonah Brief was also very severely wounded.
And the sources paint a really grim picture of just how fierce those initial clashes were. That first Sayeret Matkal force that went in, it was tiny, just 9 fighters.
9 fighters, that's it.
Yeah.
And by the end of that first contact, that first brutal push, 4 were killed and 4 were wounded.
8 out of 9.
8 out of 9. An 89th casualty rate. The sources point out this is virtually unprecedented for an initial entry force in modern IDF history. It just underscores the sheer intensity, the preparedness, frankly, of the terrorists they ran into. This wasn't a firefight as much as a brutal melee.
Yet somehow, amidst this absolute carnage, we find that supreme heroism, the Gevurah 8, that the sources insist defined the day. Tell us about the rescue of the wounded security officer. That sounds incredible.
It was one of the most remarkable acts of improvisation under fire. This was a security officer, also a resident from the nearby Kibbutz Sa'ad. He'd rushed over to Kfar Aza to help, to fight.
Oh, okay.
And he'd been severely wounded while he was positioned up on a roof. They needed to get him down fast.
How did they even reach him under fire?
With a ladder. But the sources say it was this thin, white, almost flimsy-looking ladder. They got it up against the building, climbed up, calling out his operational name.
And he answered.
He answered. But not from the roof itself. He'd apparently collapsed into the boredom.
The attic space?
Yeah, the attic or storage space just under the roof. The rescuer described seeing this, 90-kilogram figure, black vest, black helmet, lying in a pool of his own blood. Severe injuries to his thigh, his hands.
Just picturing that, the urgency must have been immense.
Totally. They applied emergency tourniquets right there in that cramped space, physically dragged him out of the bottom, down the ladder somehow, and eventually got him evacuated by helicopter. The soldiers involved themselves described it as one of the craziest missions of the entire October 7th campaign. Just pure grit and improvisation.
And beyond the professional soldiers, that heroism was mirrored by the civilians themselves, wasn't it? The Itzkin family.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying example of civilian sacrifice attack.
He really is the father of the Itzkin family. He physically held his secure room door shut against the bomb the terrorists placed right outside.
He held the door.
He held the door. The explosion saved his family inside, but it cost him both of his hands. He was bleeding out rapidly.
Oh my.
And for the soldiers who reached him, this immediately created this profound ethical, tactical conflict. What do you do?
Right. Do you devote your very limited resources, your manpower, your time for an immediate medevac for this critically hero?
Or do you press forward with a search and kill, try to neutralize more terrorists who are still actively hunting other families?
That's a decision. I mean, no training can fully prepare you for that moral weight.
Absolutely not. The decision was made to save the father, which meant pausing the push. But his sacrifice, it just demanded immediate action.
And the chaos also spurred civilian innovation just for survival. We have to talk about the
Yeah, another incredible story. The sources describe a civilian, amidst all this, finding a Subaru car. Keys just happened to be left in the ignition.
Right place, right.
Or wrong place, right time. He realized instantly, this unarmored car, it's their only immediate way to get wounded people out.
Despite the danger.
Huge danger. And in fact, the car was later hit by gunfire. Tragically, one hero, a man named Mihi, was killed in that incident. But the driver, even operating without working brakes, apparently.
No brakes.
No working brake. Managed to drive the severely wounded to safety. This one impromptu civilian vehicle run saved multiple lives.
And the danger of infiltration, terrorists in uniforms, was so high, it forced soldiers into these desperate communication methods, even with their own people.
Yeah, they had to be incredibly careful. How do you make sure you're not walking into an ambush set by a terrorist wearing a stolen IDF uniform?
So what did they do?
They came up with this fascinating piece of tactical ingenuity. Using car speakers, the PA system, like a megaphone on a police car.
Okay.
They'd broadcast a prearranged phrase or a password to the families hiding inside the mamads, the secure room. Before they even approached the door, they'd yell the code word over the loudspeaker.
And wait for a response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the family inside yelled back the correct counterphrase, only then would they open the door. It was essential to avoid walking into a trap or shooting at the wrong people.
So this battle for Kfar Aza, it wasn't quick. It lasted nearly 12 hours. Jihadi forces finally arrived around 6:00 p.m. to help stabilize.
Yeah, late in the day. And that's when the more systematic house-to-house search could really begin in earnest. But even then, the commanders were still constantly weighing that moral calculus we talked about.
It never went away.
Never went away.
Yeah.
That same dilemma. Do we focus resources on rescuing this one family we know is trapped, which is always, the highest priority in one sense?
Right.
Or do we focus on neutralizing that known active terrorist cell over there, which could potentially save multiple families down the line? They had to be ruthlessly pragmatic about where they could make the biggest life-saving impact.
All while dealing with that constant fear. Every secure room door could hide either a victim or an attack.
Exactly. Until it was open, you just didn't know.
But eventually, they did manage a large-scale extract. By Sunday morning, they gathered over 90 civilians.
Over 9 children, babies, people clutching dogs, a few bags they'd managed to grab, all gathered into a single cured compound. A moment of immense relief.
But Tim said.
They refer to this group, the sources say, as the missing minion.
The missing minion. Explain that.
Well, a minion is the quorum of 10 people you need for certain Jewish prayers. They called this group the missing minion because even with 90 people finally safe, there was always someone still unaccounted for, always someone missing from that count.
It's a haunting term.
It really is. It just encapsulates that profound, persistent sense of loss that overshadowed even the success of the rescue.
And the soldiers themselves, reflecting on it later, the personal impact was immense. Seeing the destruction, the names of the murdered residents, people they might have known from serving nearby.
Yeah, and alongside the names of their own fallen comrades, the sources confirmed for the responders there was this gut-wrenching feeling of that Mekdal, that failure of the system, coexisting right alongside this fierce pride in the Gevurah, the heroism they and their friends displayed.
Just surviving the day was considered a miracle.
A minor miracle, yeah. Purchased at an absolutely immense cost.
And even well into the mop-up phase, the danger, the deceit, it persisted. There's that chilling account of identifying a terrorist who'd murdered a family, but was trying to blend in with the wounded.
Right. This individual was actually driving a car containing 2 wounded Israelis, and he was actively using sign language, pretending to be deaf.
Trying to pass himself off as a victim or a helper.
Exactly. Hoping to evade detection, maybe escape, maybe cause more harm. Just calculated.
But he was caught.
He was. A survivor who was being evacuated at the same time recognized, identified him definitively as the man who had killed a specific family. It was only through that civilian testimony that he was apprehended. It just underlines how audacious these terrorists were, even in defeat.
So if we try to synthesize everything we've heard today, all these harrowing accounts, the sources really compel us to accept.
They absolutely do. Kfar Aza is fundamentally, inescapably, a story of a large-scale, unfathomable failure. That Mekdal, a breakdown of the military and intelligence system that allowed this tragedy to happen on such a massive, intimate scale. But it is equally, profoundly, and irrevocably a story of supreme heroism, Kfar Aza. And that heroism wasn't just the professional military, the Golani guys who went in first, the special forces who paid such a heavy price.
It's also the standby squad.
The standby squad, ordinary residents, and the civilians themselves, people who fought, as the sources say, until the very last bullet to save whoever they could. The final image the source material leaves us with, it's powerful. It's the image of a tractor plying the land again.
Yeah. On the defense of that very land, those heroes fell. And that tractor, it stands as a symbol maybe of life, of resilience trying to return to the valley.
Though, as the source sadly makes clear, not the same valley, not the same home. It can't be. #tag outro. So as we wrap up this really intense deep dive, what stands out for you, the learner? There are several clear nuggets, I think. First, that systemic failure meant essential command and control basically devolved to civilian tech.
The WhatsApp groups guiding airstrikes.
Yeah. I mean, that's an unprecedented strategic breakdown right there.
Second, that immediate moral illustrated by the Tidzit incident, the friendly fire scare, it just shows the incredible pressure, the near impossibility of sticking to protocols when you're facing pure chaos and the lines are so blurred.
Third, those sacrificial acts, whether it's the Itzcan father holding the door against a bomb or the civilian driving that damaged Subaru with no brakes, it shows that real heroism, real ingenuity came from civilians too. They were an essential part of the defense effort.
And finally, that stark cost of the initial Special Forces entry, 4 killed, 4 wounded out of just 9 guys. It's a brutal quantitative measure of the sheer ferocity they faced in those critical first hours.
And as we close this really difficult deep dive, the source recounts one last incredibly poignant detail, found later in the kibbutz synagogue.
What was it?
Cartons of Purim treat, already prepared, meticulously packed for the children of the community, just stacked there, ready to be distributed for a simple, joyous celebration of life, of history.
Oh, wow. The juxtaposition is devastating.
It is. So here's our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to reflect on. You have that ordinary, meticulous planning for a future celebration, the very essence of continuing life just shattered by absolute unforgiving savagery.
And the heroes we've discussed, they fought and died specifically to protect the possibility of that future life returning. So if life is meant to return to that land, if those tractors are to keep plowing, what does it truly take on an individual level, on a national level? What does it take to sustain that kind of heroism and to bring back some semblance of normalcy of life to a place scarred so deeply by such profound human